Welcome back to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. Oh, I'm Jim Hacking.
And I'm Tyson Mutrix. You did that the other day, too.
Yeah, so this is a live recording. We have a live audience, and we're very excited. We're at the Spring Mastermind in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We just had a great presentation by our friend and intake expert, Gary Falkowitz. What did you think of the presentation?
I thought it was awesome. I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, you know, I've heard a lot of that stuff before. Obviously, he and I talked about a lot of those things on the podcast series that he and I did. But even that being said, there's still some things I'm doing wrong and things that I can improve on. So I was glad to hear it.
Yeah, it was like those little nuggets too that like aren't in the slides that he was. It was just like little bitty like phrasings and things like that. Where I was like, oh, we gotta write that down. Right. Gotta write that down. I thought it was really, really, really good. Can we stop though a second, and acknowledge that we've never done an in-person podcast.
That's right. That's right. This is the first time we've ever been in the same room. Yeah, in 8 years. I think that's right. Maybe we've done little pop-up things, but I don't think we've ever done. Did we ever do them like on the phone? Because in the old days we did them on Skype, and that would always crash. But we might have done one.
We tried. So Jim and I, we went on a walk, and we tried to record one, and I don't think we ever went live with it. So we were sharing AirPods.
Yeah.
Or it was headphones of some sort.
It was in Columbia, I think.
And we walked, and we might have released that one.
I think we did.
Okay, so maybe it's the second one in person.
Yeah, but that was a long time ago.
It was a really long time ago.
All right, well, do you want to introduce our topic for today?
Yeah, so the fancy name you came up with it, like he's our name person. He comes up with like names for everything. It was right around the corner from greatness. And the idea is to kind of keep it that way, right? You're up and coming, you're growing this firm, and you want to be able to identify some signals that maybe things are trending in the wrong direction. So you want to keep things going. We want to try to keep you on that path, as opposed to like having this thing out there that you're ignoring and then you just crash and burn. So is that a good summary of it?
It is, and you know, I've had so many periods in my career of having this law firm for the last 16 years of times where I was not being realistic about our actual situation. I wasn't being honest with myself or with others. My son asked me the other day, what was the name of that class that you taught when you met Tyson? And I said, oh, it's something like how to run a law firm. And I said to him, Ibrahim, the irony of that is that when I met and taught that class, I was like flat broke. I was not bringing in cases. I was not doing any of the things that we talk about when it comes to building a successful law firm. So I thought we could talk about starting with some of the problems that you and I've had as law firm owners and times where we haven't properly assessed where we're at.
It was called law practice management. The smartest thing you did was bring other people in to teach. Right. The book was terrible, but it had a bunch of grammatical errors and everything. I would go through.
It wasn't my book.
It was not your book. I would proofread it, and it was like awful book. You didn't pick it, I bet.
No, I was just subbing one summer session because the main professor was out on sabbatical.
No, but you brought in people, and what was really cool is you brought in people that were specialists in different things. Like you brought in someone, it may have been from Simon, on like how to answer the phones, which I thought was really, really good. I thought that was really effective. So like that was the smart thing you did was just do that. And you had us write a business plan for the law firm, which was cool. It gets you to think, and you had to deal with other, co-owners, that was one of those things, like it was kind of eye-opening. We're like, oh, this could be, I would never want to partner with that person. Because like the way the negotiations process worked with like creating the business plan. Well,
and it's funny too, because I knew early on that helping other people create content was a good way to go. So, you know, if in a way that was the precursor to what you and I do now, talking to law firm owners and talking to experts. It's just sort of the recording of that is now in a podcast form instead of in a class.
Yeah, and it would have been nice if those were recorded though, because there were some really good things. Yeah. They're really good. They should, every professor should record every class, because it's content. There's a lot to it. But so I took detailed notes. I want to see where you and I want to kind of shift gear to the topic of the day. But where do you want to start? Because I kind of did this in order of when a case might come in. But what are some things that are sort of at the top of the list that you could identify that, hey, this is a signal that maybe things are not going right? And the way I looked at it was, these are the symptoms, and then maybe this is the indication of what's going on, is kind of the way I looked at it. So, like, what are some things that you think of when you're like, okay, you got to keep an eye on this?
Well, I think that, obviously the big ones are if you're not being able to pay your bills, if you're not paying your quarterly taxes on time, if you are having cash flow problems. I think that's the tricky thing that law firm owners forget about a lot of the time is it's cash flow. You might get a hit, especially if it's a PI situation where you have some cash that you're running with for a while, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, it's not there now, so what am I going to do?
Yeah, and I don't know how much non-PI firms use lines of credit. One of the things I put down is that you're starting to max out your line of credit, or you're using it a bunch. If you're sort of building that debt, that is an indication that currently things are not great. There's with cash flow though, and so I want to kind of stay on that topic with cash flow is the future indications. So there's some for PI firms. I'm trying to mix it in with other practice areas too. If you're starting to see a decrease in billable hours, which could be it could be from a variety of different things. That could be a personnel issue, but if you've got a decrease in those billable hours that you're collecting on, you're talking about future. So there's future cash flow problems you're gonna look at too. With a PI firm, if we have a decrease in settled cases, that's bad, right? So if we have a decrease in settled cases, if we have a decrease in leads or signed cases, that's really bad for us, because in the future, we're looking 9, 10, 11, 12 months in the future, we're going to have a dip in our revenue. And so that's going to be a problem for us, especially if you're overstaffed at the same time. Cases resolved. And this is one that's interesting to me with cash flow, because kind of if you're doing looking at PI firms, we've got to turn cases pretty quickly because we got to keep the checks coming in. That's part of it. But non-PI firms, the billables, the flat rates, kind of with your stuff, you have to turn tables, kind of like a restaurant does. And if you're not turning tables, it then snowballs. So what you have is, all right, we're not getting these cases resolved. And then what happens is that you've got these other cases kind of piling up behind you. So the waiting room is filling up, and then you can't service those people. So now your caseload is swelling, which is a problem. So you're having to hire more people for basically not getting more revenue. So it can kind of snowball, and then next thing you know, in a year, you're screwed.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily even have to go back to 2012 to talk about issues with cash flow. Last year we had a situation where the signups were coming along more slowly, and we started sort of taking money from future weeks. It had been earned, but it's money that we usually would have used for expenses for 2 or 3 weeks down the road, and quite frankly, we probably just didn't have enough of a cash cushion to be able to ride that out.
Yeah, and having that access to some sort of cash, I know we have a line of credit. Do you all do lines of credit? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think early on, I was no, anti line of credit. I just no, we want to do this thing. No, not having to tap into line of credit. But if you do want to grow, I think you have to have that access to capital, because sometimes you have to hit it sometimes. And I think that having that access is really, really important. Even if you never use it, just in case, I think it's pretty valuable.
Well, and you have cases that you have to finance, so you have to invest money into your cases. For us, that's not a situation, so that too can cover cash flow.
So yeah, that's a good point. So we had, I don't know if it was I think it was we signed more cases in Q4 of 2023 than we'd ever signed. And so it's one of those things where you have to watch out with PI, because that means you've got an increase in case expenses. And so you have to be really, really careful, because if you sort of have this thing where cases settled is going down, bunch of new signed cases, right? So you have increased costs, decreased revenues. That's a disaster waiting to happen if you don't have an ability to tap into something. And so it's one of those things where it's nice to have that if that were to ever happen, where we can tap into that to give us that cash flow, to get us through that. Because I know on the back end of that, lots of settlements, money coming in, right? But you have to have something that maybe gets you through that sometimes.
I think too that we should step back for a second in this conversation and talk about either accurate thinking or being honest with ourselves. And I think that what you and I are assuming right now is that all law firm owners have all their numbers dialed in. and are accurately looking at the reality of the situation. And I don't think that's necessarily true. And I think that can be a huge impediment, because there's like this dark thing over there in the corner that you don't want to look at, you don't want to tell your partner about, you don't want to let your employees know about, right? And when you talk about the snowball effect, to me, I just come back to, am I being honest with myself? Do I have an actual understanding of where I'm at? When I was really struggling in 2012, I was not looking at the numbers. I wasn't talking to Amani about the numbers. I was really sort of scared to even venture over there, right? And I knew it was bad, right? So, and I just didn't want to do it. And I was sort of covering it with things like eating, or, trying to figure out other things to do outside of the law firm, or even, as dumb as it sounds, excessive spending, right? So like, there's a lot of different ways that people can try to escape their reality. And I think that we have to really acknowledge that. And being a law firm owner can be so isolating, can be so all on your own, and you have all this pressure of your family, pressure of your employees, pressure of your clients. And if you're carrying all that stuff and you don't have ways to share that, to release that, if you're carrying that all on your shoulders, that's why I'm glad we're having this mastermind and others. Tomorrow in my group, I'm going to be really talking to people about being vulnerable and being honest, because if you're not honest about that here or anywhere else, you're really setting yourself for big, big problems.
So don't you think with like being open and honest, like things like, I think that is where like the power of things like EOS, scaling up, they really help, because it's sort of about that communication. Like, there's obviously, you want to have goals and targets and your rocks and all that kind of stuff, but one of the major benefits that we never talk about with like EOS and scaling up, because I use scaling up, you're more of the EOS, where you're forced to talk about it, because you're talking about, those numbers are sort of out in the open, and so you're talking about them with your leadership teams. I don't think if we do talk about it, we don't talk about that part of it enough, too, because things like that help you get those out in the open.
Well, once you're dialed in, and once you have the right numbers that you're looking at and checking out, once that happens, there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere for you to hide. There's nowhere for your team members to hide. You're going to find out the people who aren't performing, who aren't doing things the way that you want. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is this concept that, and I'm going to talk about it tomorrow in the mastermind, that we get what we tolerate. We get what we tolerate. In other words, whatever we're willing to accept, that's what we're going to get. So if you have low standards or low expectations, then you're going to get low performance. If you have high expectations and high standards, then the right people are going to stay and rise to that occasion, and the wrong people are going to wash out. And that might be you in a role that you're carrying. You might need to be not the one in charge of that role.
So there's a lot in there that a lot of different things, like when it comes like leads and accountability with your people, because some of the stuff that I looked at when it comes to like in prepping for this, because you've got these numbers, right? So let's say that there's a certain number of leads that you want to get, or signed cases. We'll say signed cases a month that you want to you have as your target. And I'm talking more from personal experience. Like earlier in this year, we saw a dip, right? We saw a dip in signed cases, and we're like, okay, what's going on? What it allows you to do, because it's out in the open, let's start assessing things and figuring out what's wrong with it. So you can point to those things, and we started to dial things back in, right? So now we're back up. If we just kind of let people that go, right, and the people that are responsible for that, let them just kind of do their own thing, we wouldn't have fixed it by now, right? And so something we did, I've talked about top grading before, is we were implementing all these different things, and we had other areas where we were tracking them, and people didn't like it. And those people aren't the people in our firm anymore, right? It sucks, but that's the reality of it. And so if you have that, if you have the pushback, I don't like you tracking that. Guess what? They shouldn't be in your firm. They should not be in your firm. And that to me is like what's really interesting, because you start to track these things, you get them out in the open, and you shine a light on it, right? It's like the rats, running around. They don't like it.
That's just what I was going to say. There are vampires in our firm, and there are vampires who are known, and there's vampires who are not known. And the vampires go screaming away, or the rats go screaming away. And when you do it in a fair way, and it's objective, and it's not bullying, but it's actually just, hey, this is the situation. When it becomes much more objective, it takes the emotion out of it. It is out there for all to see. You're going to get buy-in from other team members. They're going to understand why you make certain decisions that you make. So I think that's really important.
And I think that with that, I think it's important. Like it's not about being accusatory and say you did this or you did that or you're not doing that. It's really about like how do we fix the issue? And if you've got people that are kind of sabotaging you because they're kind of trying to sweep things under the rug because they don't want you to see, right? They're like, oh, I don't want that number out there. I don't want the. That's where like to me it's like a really big red flag. Where because we started to get we've talked about this before. That's not how we used to do things, or like I like the way the firm used to be. It's because we didn't hold you accountable. That's what it is.
Who wouldn't like that?
Yeah, that's right.
Who wouldn't
exactly
like that?
Right. You got to come in and do whatever you wanted.
Right. So I think it was President Bush that said the tyranny of low expectations, right? So if we are not holding our team to a high standard, if we're not holding ourselves to a high standard, then like I said, you're just going to get what you accept, and it's just going to be really, really bad.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit because I want to go to kind of go to your favorite topic. I thought we would start here, but we've got into other things. What are some signs that leads like the marketing's not working for you? Because you've done it at like the highest level, and you've changed things quite a bit. It's like what are you looking at? Like what are you like? Okay, like what pisses you off? You're like this drives me nuts. You know what I mean?
Well, the intake team loves to blame marketing for bad leads. Like they love to say, "Oh, these leads are bad." So,
are they bad?
Well, so we had certain sign up. We had a really great week, and it was after a really strong push of trying to get the intake team to do their job better. We did a really strong push. There were no changes in the leads, but suddenly everyone's perspective had changed, and they were like, "Oh, these leads are great. These leads are awesome." So it's so funny how they like to like ask other people and or blame other people for their issues. I think for the most part, the best signs that things are going wrong are obviously a dip in calls, more pushback on price. You know, we have people coming in from all these different channels. And we've gotten to a point where we can even tell which channels are outperforming others, and I think that's important. But if you're not getting the leads that you want, then you're probably in the wrong channels. Your message is wrong. You know, you're not connecting with people, and I think you need to change it up.
So you touched on the number of calls, and so. And Amy's in here, she can hold me accountable on this too. Like what we noticed was we had a massive drop in call, or it was actually website visits, right? Which you'd normally think not good, right? Not good. Because we were like, oh, wow, what's going on? And what we had done is Joseph, who's our SEO guy, we hired, he's in-house. Like we changed a lot of things. We removed a bunch of content, which we've been told for years to keep on there. And what was happening was we were getting a bunch of junk coming into our website, like people that we didn't want, like a bunch of 1983 cases that we didn't want, a bunch of med-mal cases that we didn't want. So we were dealing with just overwhelmed, like our intake people, our cares team was just getting flooded with junk, just crap. They really was really crap. And like, you know, criminal cases, family law cases, things that we just didn't want. Like we would just have to refer them out. We were just basically a referral service to a certain extent. But we tweaked all that, and the website leads plummeted, but our quality of leads has spiked. So I do think the reason why I want to bring that up is just because you see a drop in a number doesn't mean it's necessarily bad.
Especially if you've been doing deliberate things to discourage bad leads.
And so it's an indication that maybe I need to go and look a little bit further.
Yeah, and that's the importance of your numbers. You know, I was reading Traction again, and there was a section in there about, you know, we use software to track our numbers, and we have a goal in a 13-week rolling average of the numbers, and we've gotten too complacent with seeing red on our chart. And when you see red on your numbers, that's a sign that you can't just like roll it over to the next week. That means that's an issue. That's something you got to address and figure out why. And again, I'm holding myself responsible because I've been sort of easy on the intake team. Obviously, after sitting through Gary, we all probably feel like we've been too easy on the intake team. But objectively, Jim has been too easy on the intake team. In fact, what I was thinking while we were sitting there is, well, life's pretty hard in operations. Those guys get it pretty hard from up above. Maybe Jim and Amani should switch. Maybe Amani should go run. If Amani sat through that, she'd be seeing red at the money that you, if you really think about the money you're spending on marketing and you see that money going out the door for the leads that aren't signing up, you would be more direct with your team. And I think I've been too soft on them and soft on that issue. And I think that was the great insight I got out of today. All
right, so I want to talk about like the conversion part of it and like spending versus converting, all that. But I'm just curious, like why the 13-week rolling average? Like why?
Oh, it's just the way the software works. It just shows you, you have the column for what your goal is. Then you have each of your columns have the 13 rolling weeks. So then you can see how things are trending. If what your average for each number, whatever the number is, you have your goal and then it compares it. It's nice to have.
All right, so let's shift gears to kind of back what you were talking about. So you spend this money on marketing, right? And then you've got to the point where you signed up the case, and so that's the frame that I'm talking about. So you spent the money on the marketing, signing cases. We're not signing cases. There is a friend of ours. He's a guild member. I won't mention anything else, but I know that he a couple years ago spent a lot of money on marketing and got one lead. That sucks, right? Like that really, really sucks. But I do think that between, like I think that's one of those things that's an extreme example. I think most of the time we're spending a bunch of money and we're not seeing the results, but there's a lot in between that we can track to figure out what we can tweak here and there. So like what are some of the things that you will look at that people can look at, like, okay, how do I dial these in a little bit more? Because instead of just like firing your marketing company or stopping what you're doing, you might be able to do some other things in the middle to make sure you're getting those signed cases.
Well, you probably always want to test, right? And so for us, each rung of the funnel from lead in to need determined, attorney qualified, contract sent, contract signed, paid. At each of those are all hinges. So if you can improve each one 1% or 2%, that's going to have exponential growth, not incremental growth. So I think that's the key to us is, where's the problem? Which of the goals that we have, and we have a goal for each of the. We have a goal for lead-ins. We have a goal for attorney qualified, and the conversion rate that Gary was talking about. And then you're always just trying to make incremental improvements.
So what's that first hinge?
For us, it's lead in, and then need determined, which means that our intake team has reached out to them and figured out that they have a kind of case that we might want to help with. And so to your point about getting a lot of fluff leads or bad leads, we have a real problem there. So we get hundreds of leads each week, but getting that down to need determined, that's almost 50% right there. So half of our leads out of 400 leads are no good. I mean, we get people calling, they just said today, I said, how are the leads this week? They're like, we're getting a lot of, hey, can you find me a job in Iowa? Stuff like that.
So that then is going to, it's going to delay how long it takes people to reach out to actual valuable leads, which is going to then drop those numbers too. Because so that's interesting.
But my team has developed filters. Like they'll look at area codes, see if they have a U.S. number. That's one thing, and then they look at, we have a standard sort of, do they have a path that they know of, right? If they don't know of a path and they think they can get some immigration benefit, like we literally get people in Madagascar saying, can I become a citizen tomorrow? So that's just.
How could you filter that out before they even have to do all that manual looking?
It's tough.
I wonder if AI can help you with that soon.
Maybe.
Probably. Okay, that's interesting. So then is that a content problem or is that like an SEO? Like what?
That's Jim's fat head on YouTube problem is what that is.
Is that what that is?
I just talk to everybody, right? I don't know if I'm in the right pond or not.
So will you tweak that based on that, or do you think you'll keep doing?
Actually, I go on the show and I say, don't call us and ask for a job in Iowa. Only call our. They made me. I do this every episode.
Wait, you weren't joking. Like they're literally calling about jobs in Iowa.
Yeah, or I'm 18 years old. I really want to live in the United States. How can you help me? Well, I can't, right? I can't really. Maybe I can tell them to go find a student visa or something, right? No, so that's a real problem. So literally, the marketing team we have marketing designed to repel those people.
Okay, that's good. So that reminds me of, I just like talking about this one because it's, we had this one where we were getting a string of like injury cases. It was like about not having insurance because, people that practice in Missouri, there's like pay to play statute where if you don't have insurance and you're in a car crash, there's some exceptions to it, but you can't get pain and suffering if you didn't have auto insurance. So it sucks.
That's a Missouri law?
It's a Missouri law. Now there's been
Those
there's been some challenges to it lately, and like there's some circuit court decisions that you can kind of use to try to get them to pay. But what was good is like we did some videos where we this is a case and this is not a case, and so it changed what the number of good cases we were getting and the number of bad cases or good calls versus bad calls. So there is a way of tweaking, and ours is to a lower extent than what yours is because your content is on a much greater scale. But I'm sure that you probably have that issue a lot more where you're having to tweak things quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so then like what's that next hinge? And we don't spend a whole lot of time on marketing.
Attorney qualified, that means they've talked to an attorney. So that's really where we start our conversion rate. If they've talked to an attorney, so we have 3 intake attorneys who don't handle cases, they just do intake. And once we get to that, we still got a lot of room to improve. So our conversion rate is only 30% of the ones we want, So Gary said that should be, Gary said there's firms that have 95, 98%.
Yeah, so like whenever you're trying to fix that area, like what are you looking at? Like how can you, I'm just curious like what things you can do.
Post-call follow-up, what makes people decide to hire us? One thing we're not doing, and I was just talking to somebody after about we need to do, I was talking to Carrie about really listening to the calls of the people that don't sign up and figuring out what are the trends in the cases that we would like to sign up but people don't hire us.
That's a good one. Let's say it was PI. Like if you were going to be designing this for a PI firm, like what would you look at?
Well, what are the main reasons PI people don't sign up?
Let's see. Main reasons why they wouldn't sign up. They want to. I would say number one is they want to handle it on their own. That's probably the main thing.
The do-it-yourselfers.
We don't lose a ton to other firms, so that's good because we do have a really good follow-up. The DIYs are I'd say number one. Number two is our fee sometimes, where we're at 35% as opposed to a third, but we also don't. We have a way of selling that because we don't have that elevator that goes to 40%. But it's a lot of times it's at 35%. The number one's the DIYers though.
Is that 2% important to you?
It is very important because what happens is sometimes you have to file suit on a case. Okay, you just have to get the true value. The problem we would run into quite a bit was you get up to the point where you need to file suit, and they'd say, well, your fee goes from a third to 40%. I just want to settle the case, and they'd be like, well, let's say you file suit, you get more money. Will you drop it down to a third? And 35%. It's 35%. They don't have to worry about it going up. We'll file suit if we need to file suit on it. It doesn't change. So yeah, I think it's not about the additional 2%. It's about being able to do other things. It's about not having confusion for the clients. It's about them not having to second guess, okay, well, they're going to get more money. Am I going to get more money? It just makes it easy.
Is there a way that you could make the increase dependent on getting them more money? Like the percentage changes for what, like if you reach the max of what they're offering and then you file suit and you get them more, could you hinge it on that?
Well, there's a way. I think that would complicate. I think that would complicate it.
But maybe you should test.
Good. I don't think that the number of cases that we lose because of that is that big to worry about, really. All right, so I want to get to something that you probably avoid like the plague, and it's more like the operation side of things, the client management side of things. Yeah. So what are some of the things that you look at when it comes to some red flags to keep an eye on?
Well, as someone who handles no cases, the number one thing
But you used to, though.
Well, no, I have an answer. The number one thing I look at is people that email me. Because everybody thinks I'm their lawyer. Even though I don't handle any cases, everyone thinks I'm their lawyer. So number one is, and I got 2 this week about the same employee. So I got 2 complaints to me about the process is not being followed. I don't know. I mean, I defer to you more on that because you do more operation stuff.
Yeah, at number one, lots of update calls. You're getting calls from people, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on with my case?" Yeah. Those calls, because those calls are just they grind everything to a halt. I know that they're calling to get an update, and they deserve an update, But if you have them like if you're doing that all day, you're not doing anything else. Like you're not doing anything on anyone's cases. So if you that's like one of the big ones where like I know we started to really get things tuned in whenever all those started to plummet. Like that is one, like if you're dialed in, you're not getting a bunch of update calls.
And you've spent a lot of time making systems to affirmatively advise clients of what's going on in their cases much better than I have.
Yeah, and it's about educating the clients about the process. Right. And it's educating them about the process, but it's updating them. It's creating mechanisms that do update them as the case progresses. But a lot of that upfront stuff, like with Gary, I'm going to steal some of the things he was talking about earlier too, about here's what's going to happen next. And he said it really well. And so I wrote down some of the things he said, but which we're going to tweak things just a little bit. But like explaining that up front as to how things are going to happen is big. Getting those videos out the door, like the automated text messages and all that, the emails, here's what's going to happen, here's how long it takes, here's how long your case takes. Setting those expectations.
How do you explain the different stages? Like, how do you explain interrogatories? How do you explain depositions?
We have videos and podcasts that go out. Is that what you mean? Or like, yeah. So we have email, videos and podcasts that go out. Depositions, emails and podcasts that go out. The depositions is really handy because we have that whole course that we created for clients, and they all like to listen to the podcast before the depo. So on their way to the depo, they'll listen to just to kind of remind themselves. And those are things that we're not having to.
Well, think how much time you've saved.
A ton.
Yeah, because you're saying the same thing every time.
Yeah, our depo prep is the amount of time it used to take has been condensed down to a lot of times it's a 30-minute phone call. When they're like, I feel great. Like I went through all the training, and I know the ones that did it and they didn't do it. Like I can see where like if they actually completed the training, but it's also very evident when I'm on the phone call with them.
Yeah.
Like have you actually done?
They're clueless.
Yeah. So that's pretty good. You know, you mentioned frequent complaints. That's another one where if you're getting those, you're having an issue. You're getting Google reviews. Something, I'm going to throw this in here, like one of my favorite things to look at, and I'm going to pull this up, is the client feedback scores. And so we have it, like this is something we track, and this is something we act, like we're proactive about it. If we start to see a dip in our client feedback scores, that's a big problem. Like so, if you look, here's our check-ins on communications, like how we're communicating with clients. See there's a massive drop that, like earlier here. This was this is 2021. So this goes all the way back to 2021. This is 2024. So we see, okay, if we see a dip, we need to do something about it. Now the dip is down to like, that's 8.2 is the lowest. So it's not like it's terrible, but like right now we are at, see that, over 9.8. Like that's a big indication to us. Like okay, how are we doing on client communication scores? And we track two different things. It's how we're communicating with you, but what's our responsiveness to you? Like that's a different score because these are different, right? You got they're similar, but you can see that the trends are different.
Do those come out as if from you, Tyson?
Is it for me personally?
Does it like say, hey, this is Tyson, I'm checking in on you, or is it just?
No, these are, we call the clients.
Oh, you call.
So we manually call the clients. You're probably
wow.
like, oh, you could do this via text. Sure, you could. But if someone says, I'm going to give you a 7 or a 6 or lower, guess what? What's going on? Like we can assess the problem and figure out what's going on. So anytime there's a dip in a team, we can say, hey, what's going on? And we can look at their team to figure out and diagnose what the problem is. And so that's another one of those big ones that if you're not tracking those, it's a massive, it's a really easy way. Now there's an expense to it, right? We're having to actually have people call. You can send out text messages and do it in a different way. That's fine. But it's an easy way to diagnose problems with that client and then head off whatever the problem is before it becomes a really big issue.
That's good. Yeah, we use Net Promoter Scores at different stages of the process, but in honesty, we just look at the comments and we don't necessarily look at the overall score, so we probably should do a better job of that.
Yeah, and it's also an easy way for you to ask for reviews too. That's a good one. And then I guess the last thing I want to talk about, because we can talk about process and everything. How are we doing on time?
I don't know.
We're
good.
Okay, we can talk about a couple other things. Let's talk about culture and personnel, because we kind of hinted on this earlier. Like what you've kind of had like you've gone up and down. Like and I've gone up and down when it comes to like the culture, right? Like it doesn't stay the same. Like no matter what, as you grow. So like what are if you were to like point to like one or two things, like what are those things that people should keep an eye out for?
So for us, our culture was all over the place until we came up with our core values. So we sat down, Adela, Amani, and Jim sat down 3 years ago, and we made a list of the employees through our past who had been the ones that exhibited the kind of lawyers or paralegals we wanted our team members to be. And so we wrote down all their names, and then we went person by person and said, what are the characteristics that Andy shows? What are the characteristics that Aaron shows? And then once we had that list of characteristics, then we sort of saw trends, and that's how we came up with our core values. So to me, it was like in Kansas City, they have a little dinosaur thing for kids, and it's little black pellets of old tires, and you actually dust off the dinosaurs. And to me, that's how we came up with our core values, is we unearthed them, right? And so we came up with our 6 core values, and now we hire on our core values, and we review people on our core values, and we give raises based on our core values. And and we talk about core values at every quarterly meeting. We talk about it at every review. We talk about them all the time. We have them posted in the office. And I think that really has helped instill the culture. Core value number 1 is we fight for immigrants every day, and that's sort of the approach that we wanted. And so I think that's really helped keep the core values and the culture a little bit more consistent than personality based.
I like that. I think that anyone that hasn't done those, the core values, because we get a lot of questions about that all the time. I think that's an easy way of doing it. I think it's great. I think it's one that you're going to get a lot of buy-in with.
Yeah, and so then when we do reviews, this is a traction thing. When we do reviews, we list each core value, and people get a plus, or a plus minus, or a minus. And a plus means they exhibit that characteristic 75% of the time, plus minus between 25 and 75, and minus. And then there's certain of the 6 core values, there's some that we cannot accept a minus on, right? Or some we can't even accept the plus minus. And we thought actually you had to have 6. We were doing it wrong for a while. And then after the core values, then we have get it, want it, and have the capacity. So does the person get the job? Do they want the job? And do they have the capacity for the job?
I like that. I'm smiling because I'm kind of thinking about like what you're going to say about what to look at when it comes to culture.
Yeah.
And I think it really just comes down to if you've got like that internal, like that negative turmoil.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, like that. It's just like that kind of like that backbiting. If you have that, like your culture's wrong. Your culture's wrong. I think it's that simple. And because I think that you can have positive turmoil, but I wouldn't call it turmoil. I would just call it like you're having
energy.
Yeah, you can disagree about things. We encourage disagreement. We like disagreement. That's good. But it's like that negative energy that's really, really bad. And what kind of part of the reason why I was smiling is I thought you were going to talk about something else. So Amy and I, we went through this. Don't everybody tell anybody about any of our plays, but we went through and we created like a list of what are the essential roles in the firm. Like we could never do without these roles, okay? And then we took and we kind of drafted. We did a draft where like these are the employees that we'd pick, and like it was like I'm talking like if we were to cut our firm by like 2/3, like so we made it really, really difficult for us. And because I think I've talked a little bit about this, but
yeah, we did.
But not all of this. So what we did is we went through and we drafted. Okay, here's who we would go with, and you're left with people that you like. Oh, they're kind of borderline. I think I'd like to have them, and then you have your ones over here that right away they would never make the list, and those are the ones you don't want in your firm. It sounds ruthless. It sounds terrible, but it's one of those things that forces you to go through this. And you're like, okay, if I were going to redesign this, these people would never be a part of the team. It's tough, but it forces you to make some really tough decisions if you're going to do that.
And did you?
We did, yeah. It's we had to make some tough decisions. But if you're going to get the team that you want, you have to make tough decisions. That's the reality of it.
Agreed.
All right. Last thing we're talking about is like processes and stuff. Like, what are some indications that the processes really aren't working? Do you want to anything you want to throw out on that?
Well, it's tricky for us because the cases that we used to have that took 2 or 3 months now take a year and a half. So that and there's still big gaps where nothing's really happening. So that's hard to carry as a law firm. And I don't think we did a very good job of realizing the impact of cases taking 4 times, not because of anything we're doing, it's just because of the government. So I think that's one thing. But with processes themselves, I mean, I was talking to the intake team, and I know that our processes as documented are out of date. So I think you have to have regular review of your processes, and I think having different people involved in that is good. But I think that if you just expect the same old processes to keep working, things are too dynamic in a law firm.
Yeah, so the first thing you said is really interesting, because 2 of the things I wrote down were cases taking too long and any phase of a case taking too long. But with what we were saying earlier, yours are taking longer for other reasons. But the point is that you track it and you kind of diagnose what the problem is. Like, those are like 2 of the big ones for me. Some other things is that incomplete files. If you look at a file, it's something, there's things that are incomplete. It may be a process problem, a really, really easy way. Okay, maybe like where in the process are we missing this thing? And so it may easily be a process problem. Deadlines being missed, like discovery deadlines. If you have your attorneys regularly missing deadlines or having to get extensions, you probably have a process problem. That's another one. For us, I know that we're not following the process if I start to see a dip in our average fee. I talk about average fee quite a bit, but I know that you're not following the process if I look at your team and see that the average fee's down. Because what you're doing is you're not going the extra step of sending the 2 or 3 additional demands and then sending that hammer letter. What you're doing is you're just trying to get the case settled as quickly as possible. And so what you're doing is you're coming off the policy and you're saying, okay, well, it's a $50,000 policy. I'll make a counter for $40,000. I know that you're doing that. I guarantee that that's what you're doing. If I look at all your files, on average, that's what you're doing. You're selling the cases short, is what you're doing. So that's a key indicator for me.
The last thing I want to say about processes, I finally have come to believe that there have to be things, you have to have a part of your system that prevents people from proceeding without doing what you want them to do at that stage. And if you leave it up to chance or leave it up to how people feel, you have to have the system so that the same things are done, the important things. It's okay to leave the small things, but the important things have to be done and verified and checked before they move on to the next stage.
Yeah, and the way we're looking at it with that is, if I were to remove the employee, how would this continue down the line? So if you were to take, and I'm not saying at all that you should get rid of employees, but what could I do if it was just the client and it was like basically a DIY software, right? How would I continue to move the case down the road if I remove the employee from it? And it's a thought exercise that'll help you kind of streamline things. That way you can keep that employee there. Because the way I view it is, like, we're a customer service firm. Like, it's about customer service. So we need the employees to provide that customer service. It means a lot of phone calls, right? I can't wait to hear what you're going to say here. But you use that technology to move it down the road, and then you use the employees to call and check on the clients all the time to see how they're doing. What was that?
I'm laughing because you have some pretty cutthroat thought exercises.
Yes.
And a lot of them involve eliminating employees.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe. But that's not what I'm saying, though. That's not what I'm advocating for. But it's a good thought exercise.
Cool.
All right, ready to wrap things up?
I am ready to wrap.
It's weird wrapping things up whenever we're in person, but
yeah.
We want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we're going to sort of wrap things up. Before I do, I want to remind all of you that are here, give us a 5-star review, and everyone listening. It helps us spread the love to all amazing attorneys like you all. And if you want to join the guild, all of you in the guild here, it's fantastic. So you don't need to do this, but anyone else, go to maxlawguild.com. So, what's your hack of the week?
For my hack of the week, it's to listen to 2 words. See if you say these words, or if people on your team say these words. And the words are sort of. Sort of. Are we following this process? Sort of. Are we doing well on intake? Sort of. Sort of is a very soft and squishy phrase that covers a lot of shenanigans and people not doing things the way that they're supposed to. So listen to yourself and listen to those words, because I am an old softy and I need to stop using words like sort of.
I like that a lot. That's good. Interesting. That one of my red flags was that well, that's not how such and such does it. So it means like you're not following the process. Like that such and such over there wants to do their own thing. But so that's the sort of thing that's interesting. So I wanted to have something more sort of intake related. So that's good. The intake as well. The sort of. And I'm gonna give a tip that I previously gave, but I'm also gonna give a new one as well. The new one, if I'm gonna assume everyone's tracking their leads in a pipeline and everything, you're tracking them. Go look at the last 10 that you lost, and see if you can identify the trend. Figure out what's going on. Is there one person that's handling those leads? Did you not follow up? Just look and identify the trends. Just look at them. Sure, you might have something that tracks it in your system or whatever, but just go look and read through the notes and see if you can identify something, because you might be able to identify, oh, this is why. The other thing, though, is I was talking to Brooks about this there's something Gary had mentioned. It made me think about it, and I'd given this as a previous tip, but one of the things we do in our notes whenever we're talking to clients, and you could do this with leads too, is we'll write at the end of the note a little bitty thing about whatever they were doing. So I use an example of Brooks, like they were at the grocery store talking to me on the phone and they were picking up diapers for their kid, right? So you put in that little bitty thing, whatever that thing is. And so, yeah, Jim, last time, you called, I know you were at the store and you were picking up some diapers for your kid, how's your baby doing? You just throw it in, and like you're kind of looping. You're just kind of keep looping and looping and looping. And it helps that continuity, and this is something that just came up organically. I didn't come up with it. One or two of our people came up with it. And I love it. It's great because it does allow you kind of look in the notes. You're just like, oh, this is what's going on in their life, and they're like, oh, they actually give a shit, which is like pretty cool.
Awesome.
Cool. All right, man. This is fun.
It was fun.